People in Poland keep getting pelted with tennis balls whenever they walk in front of one particular balcony, but any annoyance that they might feel quickly fades when they look up and realize that the projectiles aren't being launched by a grumpy neighbor, but rather this cute pup who has been roping strangers into playing fetch with her. The dog's name is Buba, and her human says that she came up with the game by herself after she accidentally knocked a tennis ball off the ledge. A passerby picked it up and threw it back to her, and she was so delighted that she hasn't stopped pushing tennis balls off the balcony ever since. Her little game has actually made her somewhat of a star in the city of Łódź, and some have traveled from neighboring cities just to play a little balcony fetch with her. Buba is never rejected, and even those who seem to be in a hurry stop to give her a few tosses. So she's not only entertaining herself, but also encouraging people to slow down for just a moment and share a little laugh with the people around them. After each play session, she retreats back into the comfort of her home until she's feeling rested and recharged enough to drop more of her toys on the strangers who happen to walk by. A seal pup was rescued by a herd of confused cows who surrounded her after finding her stuck in mud in the middle of a field. The 5-day-old pup had become separated from her mother and ended up in Frampton Marsh, a sanctuary and nature preserve. Some inquisitive cows noticed her, and not knowing what to make of the unusual creature, the whole herd started gathering around her. At the same time, a birdwatcher named Ian was taking a stroll through the reserve, and the large gathering of cows caught his attention. Sensing that this was abnormal and there was probably a reason for the impromptu cow meeting, Ian walked closer and found the seal pup in distress. He called the Natureland Seal Sanctuary, and rescuers responded immediately, taking the seal pup in and naming her Celebration. She wasn't in great shape, but in their care, Celebration recovered from dehydration and a lung infection. And she met another rescued seal named Charlie, who arrived around the same time she did. During her stay at the sanctuary, Celebration and Charlie became the best of friends, and side by side, they both gained the strength that they needed to be released. When they were healthy enough, the seal friends were released into the wild together, with Ian in attendance to wish them well. Thanks to the cows that brought attention to Celebration before it was too late, and to Ian for noticing, she was given the chance to live her life out in the ocean as she should. Pearl the cat is here to make sure that everyone keeps their paws off his watermelons. He's the site supervisor and guard for a large watermelon farm, and he never takes the day off. Pearl is highly experienced in the watermelon industry, and he's been on the job for nearly 9 years. He's such an effective leader that he can motivate the rest of the farm's employees by just sitting in a chair in the shade, looking both angry and adorable. And he knows how to keep his coworkers happy, occasionally going to the store in the middle of the workday just to bring the team back a snack. Pearl is a master of delegation, and he rarely has to do any paws-on work himself, but because he knows that nobody can sit directly next to watermelons as well as he can, he does take charge of guarding the farm's supply, making sure nobody walks off with a melon without paying. On rare occasion, Pearl's coworkers catch him taking a nap in the office in the middle of the day, but they give him a pass because they know that firing him would throw the farm's operations into a state of chaos. To balance out his long hours of sitting in his favorite chair, Pearl does take time for himself sometimes, and his favorite hobby is fishing. His coworkers say that while he puts on an intimidating front, Pearl's actually really nice when you get to know him. A woman was forced to stay home from work because Neil the seal decided to take a nap in front of her car. When Amber Harris woke up, she thought she heard somebody breaking into her car, but when she looked out her window, it wasn't a burglar, but a 1,300-pound elephant seal named Neil flopping around her yard. In the process of finding a perfect nap spot, Neil broke Amber's mailbox and then settled in right next to her car. So she called her boss and let her know that she wouldn't be coming in because a giant seal was blocking her only mode of transportation. She went ahead and sent some photos for good measure, and her boss gave her day off the seal of approval. Amber then contacted marine conservation experts, and they advised her to just keep her distance until he decided to move on, which he did a few hours later. Neil is actually a very popular resident of the Tasmanian city, and while he usually stays around the beach areas, he's also well known for taking the occasional stroll around town. So the marine conservation team has fitted him with a tracking device so that they can keep track of him and help him if he ever goes anywhere too unsafe. Locals love and respect Neil, and they know to keep at least 30 feet away from him at all times. And Amber says that she's not sure why he chose her yard, but that he's welcome to come back anytime. 2 masked bandits broke into a bank in California after hours, but they've been released and they will not be facing charges. Muddy paw prints left behind at the scene suggest that the Raccoon Duo climbed a tree outside of the bank, somehow made their way into the air ducts, and then made a dramatic entrance by bursting through the ceiling tiles. Their heist was foiled when a customer using the outdoor ATM spotted something moving inside. Upon making the realization and that it was a couple of wild raccoons, he called the Peninsula Humane Society to report the would-be criminals. Responding to their first bank robbery call ever, the Humane Society team arrived at the scene and spent about 10 minutes chasing the partners in crime around. They determined that thankfully neither raccoon had been injured while attempting to rob the bank, and they'd only caused minor damage, knocking over one computer and shuffling around some papers. Using the confused wild animal defense, they were cleared of all alleged crimes. They were safely returned to the outdoors, and they didn't end up making off with any cash, at least to anyone's knowledge. The stray dog followed a couple for 4 days while they were on a bike tour abroad. They initially weren't quite sure what to do, and they assumed that eventually the dog would go her own way. Maggie and Maeve are from Chicago, but they were in Montenegro at the time, and there are lots of strays in the area. When they stopped for some bike maintenance, one came up to them. She was covered in fleas and ticks, but she was friendly, and Maggie and Maeve gave her some love and a snack and continued on their way. But the dog followed for miles and miles, and even when they set up camp for the night and woke up in the morning, she was still there. This continued for 4 days, with the stray dog, who they called Monty, never falling far behind. They started to really fall in love with Monty, and knew that they at least needed to get her to a vet to take care of her fleas and ticks. The vet recommended spay surgery, and Maggie and Maeve considered covering the procedure and then trying to find someone local to adopt her. But the thought of leaving Monty behind at this point made both of them too sad. So they went through with the procedure and found someone local to foster Monty while she recovered. And while it's far from a simple process to travel internationally with a dog, Maggie and Maeve got Monty her own passport and got her cleared for travel back to the US with them. Monty is now living her best life in Illinois, thriving in a cozy home and joining Maggie and Maeve on all of their outdoor adventures. I'm Jen, and I post something positive every day, and you can see more from Monty on Maggie's account, which is tagged and in the caption.